Gusto niyo bang malaman kung paano kami nakikipag-collab sa mga brands in the MT Show podcast? We use Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. If meron kang podcast, sign up now at podmetrics.co and use my code DMTGShowPod to get full control on how you monetize your show regarding of its size. Again, sign up now at podmetrics.co and use my code DMTGShowPod. If you're an advertiser who wants to collab with us, head on over to advertiser.podmetrics.co and fill up the form. Again, Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast.
Mainit na diskusyonan,
Masarap na kwentuhan,
malinamnam na usapan,
at nakakagising na balitaktakan.
parang kape lang. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Weya Angeline
Join us in our conversations at Coffee na Lang Dear Podcast.
This is Mike and Ham from Please Pause. Meron kaming munting podcast where we talk about all things TV and film. And despite that, surprisingly, we are still married.
Control freak ka kasi sa podcast na to.
30 seconds lang po ang meron tayo. Pakibilisan.
From blockbusters to classics, superheroes to love teams, hit series to teleseries, join us as we have meaningful and meaningless conversations on the stuff we watched. Someday, mababago ka rin ang tagline na yan.
Check out Please Pause on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other major podcast platforms.
See you there!
Pipe Network presents.
Welcome to your unfiltered Tagalog Wrestling Podcast. This is the MTG Show Podcast. Welcome to your unfiltered Tagalog Wrestling Podcast, and this is the MTG Show Podcast, Wrestling Podcast. Sorry, sorry guys for some major adjustments for this week's podcast because for this week's podcast, ang dami kong fini-figure out kasi actually, ewan ko, but this is the last day na magre-record ako here in my own home. Dito sa bahay. Kasi doon sa last episode, medyo I'm not impressed on the audio outcome, but still fine. Thanks to Slick of these Drunken Midnights and also to the Pipe Network family for the opportunity. Siyempre, na makapagawa tayo ng episodes na ganun o na ganito. Siyempre, bihira kasi sa network ng magkaroon ng crossovers. Sobrang bihira. And I think ako yung unang nakagawa ng crossover sa Bang Collective. So, also, I wanna give a shout out to Bang Collective. And thank you very much. And kay Slick din, I wanna say thank you for him. Kasi, despite of what the hell is going on in his place, andito pa rin siya sa show last week. And still, we did it. Umuulan last week. Pero putang ina, fuck that. Natapos namin yung almost 2-hour podcast despite of the rains. And ito yung masama eh. Next week, I think, or after ng 15th, mukhang magla-lockdown na naman tayo. Sobrang lungkot ko talaga nung nabasa ko yung balita. Pero posible daw na magkaroon ulit ng lockdowns here in Metro Manila. and nearby provinces. So, kasama kami doon. If pag sinabing lockdown sa NCR, lagi kaming sabit. Kaya hindi nakakagulat na tumatagal lalo yung sitwasyon eh. Because of them as well. But, despite of the lockdowns, fact that I don't want to discuss that in this podcast, I wanna give a shout out then kay Hidilyn Diaz, our first gold medalist in a while. Kala mo yun, 97 fucking years. And now, we got another medalist, gold medalist in the Olympics. But unfortunately, hindi ko siya napanood ng buo kasi wala sa Free TV. Hindi nila pinalabas sa Free TV. Wala tayong magagawa. But I want to say congratulations in behalf of myself and ewan, I hope na mas marami ka pang makuwang medals kaysa sa mga ambag nung mga nakaupo dyan. No name needed. You don't need to drop names, basta yeah. So for this week's podcast, syempre malapit na tayo sa SummerSlam. Malapit na rin tayo sa TakeOver 36 and 1 week after noon ay merong All Out. So syempre, lalaking pay-per-views nito. All Out is AEW's, I think, the biggest pay-per-view. SummerSlam is the WrestleMania of this year and TakeOver 36 is the third TakeOver of this year. So I don't think third ba? Fourth pala. And I think that TakeOver will level kaysa sa SummerSlam and sa All Out. Sobrang magkakadikit yung level ng tatlong pay-per-view na yun. And sobrang possible. Ang laki ng possible opportunities doon sa tatlong pay-per-views na yan. So, of course, this week, we're going to talk about Raw, SmackDown, NXT UK, some Impact. Kung yung fallout pala ng Impact last week, we're going to talk about that in a bit. Kasi di ko siya masyado napag-usapan doon sa huling episode. And yung, alam mo yan, yung mga nangyari kanina sa Dynamite and yung mga nangyari sa NXT na pre-tape. We all know pre-tape because of kasi sa US, ang may hawak ng Olympics is NBC Network. So, si USA Network is NBC. Kaya, we know na sila yung may hawak sa Olympics dyan sa US. Bago tayo magpatuloy, I wanna give a shout out to Podmetrics. Of course, the easiest way to monetize the podcast. If you want to start your podcast, visit podmetrics.co. And of course, please use my code, the MTG Show Pod, to get full control on how you monetize your show regarding of its size. Ayan, Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast, the MTG Show Pod. So, let's start the podcast kasi marami na akong sinasabi masyado. Ito, SmackDown. Let's start with SmackDown. Nag-open si Cena ng SmackDown last week. And ito dapat yung mangyayari, hindi yung nangyari sa Raw. Medyo pointless sa akin yung nangyari sa Raw. In-explain ko naman siya last week. And hindi ako nagkamali. Sobrang pointless na. So, ito nga. Nag-challenge si John Cena nga nung Raw last week. And now, on this week's episode of SmackDown, kinallenge niya ulit. And parang hinipe niya yung crowd. So, kanino ka ba? Kung Cena, syempre. Tapos, bubo mo si Roman. Ganun eh. Parang, kino-call out niya pa din. Pero wala. Hindi siya nag-show off. Hindi siya nag-show out. Hindi siya nababas. So, instead, si Paul Heyman, the Tribal Chiefs Special Counsel, lumabas siya sa stage and then hindi naman siya worth it pakinggan. And then, makukuha niya yung sagot sa sariling oras. But on his time. And then, sobrang lap trip nito, putya. Minak niya pa yung theme song ni John Cena, which is The Time Is Now. And sobrang, alam mo yun, putya, sobrang nakakatawa yung segment na yun. Kahit sabihin natin sobrang overused na nung segment. And yung sobrang overused na ni Paul Heyman doing that thing. Sobrang entertaining pa rin eh. Mm. And yung setup na yun, it makes sense regardless on what the hell is going on. And yeah, yun. Sobrang ganda lang talaga noong segment na yun of course, ni John Cena. And then dumagdag pa si Heyman. So, yeah, parang sinasabi natin on this one, parang maganda yung tungo noong feud with John Cena, which is John Cena obviously, siya yung nagdadala ng feud. Roman Reigns, siya lang ang gagawa ng work on the match itself. And then, let's continue with the Baron Corbin story. And ito yun eh. Ito yung gusto kong i-commentary every week eh. I love Baron Corbin's work on this one kasi sobrang effective. Kahit pa paano, parang ganito yung nangyari kay Bayley last year. Maraming may ayaw sa heel turn ni Bayley last year. And ngayon, sobrang effective eh. Sobrang effective nito kay Corbin. Wala akong pakialam sa mga haters nun. Pero ito eh, sobrang effective nito. Kitang-kita nyo naman. Kaso nga lang, syempre di mo mawawala yung pagtatawanan ka eh, no? Pero, hindi mo mawawala sa kanya yun. Sobrang normal na nun. Ang hindi ko lang makakalimutan on this segment ni Corbin, kung paano nag-work out yung sequence after nga noong ginakawan nga siya, $20 I think from Kevin Owens, and yung setup kung paano magta-turn si Corbin. Siyempre, nag-follow up yun eh. Pero I don't get it. I love the Corbin thing, but hindi ko magets. Hindi ko magets yung susunod. Pero sige, let's move on. Eto, heads up. Itong susunod na lines na sasabihin ko is all my own opinion. Ano? Sa akin lang to. Kasi medyo na-upset na rin ako on this idea. Tanongin na lang sa mga members ng PHC kasi dami ko ng argument eh. Sobrang dami kong argument about this one. And I want to point this thing out here in the podcast itself. Ano? Sige. Pag-usapan natin yung Rolling Loud. Rolling Loud Music Festival. Nagkaroon ng SmackDown matches doon. 2 matches na magkasunod. So let's start with the first match. The Street Profits feud versus Alpha Academy feud. Sige, pag-usapan natin. Huwag na natin pag-usapan yung match. Kasi we all know Angelo Dawkins will win the match. Let's talk about the logic here in the Rolling Loud Festival bago natin i-move on doon sa isa pang match about the Rolling Loud. So, Rolling Loud, kung mapapansin nyo, yung, let's say the crowd is so big, sobrang daming tao. Pero yung mga tangan, hindi yan nagpunta for wrestling eh. Bakit ka magdadala ng isang wrestling show sa isang music festival? Puro sabog yung tao. Kahit kahit sino doon, pre. Bilangin mo yung, imagine mo, 100,000 tao yan. Hindi yan pupunta dyan. Para lang sa wrestling yan nasa unahan. Halos hindi mo makikita yun. Man, logic. Bakit ka maglalagay ng wrestling matches sa isang music festival, especially this hip-hop festival, na wala namang kinalaman sa wrestling eh. Wala talaga. I don't think. Sobrang man. May relevance ba? Wala. Wala naman relevance eh. Kasi number 1, hip-hop. Hip-hop festival yun. Puro nga sabog. Sinabi ko na. Bakit kayo nag-exist na maglagay ng isang ng mga matches during a fucking hip-hop festival na wala namang kinalaman. Number one, walang kinalaman sa storyline. Number two, hindi rin kilala eh. Siyempre, hindi gagalaw yung tao dyan. Kasi hindi naman And number three, pagkatapos, sobrang daming disaster na nangyari right after eh. Parang hindi na nagkasunod-sunod yung flow ng show. My first thought, though, is itong Rolling Loud ang mag-uumpisa. Eh, hindi pala. Nag-uumpisa sila 8:45, I think, in Manila time. 8:45 in Eastern time. Eh, putyang ina. 8:45, nag-ayos pa rin sila eh. And dude, maayos yung time clock noong festival. Tinignan natin eh. Sobrang... oh man. Good Lord. Sobrang ridiculous lang na naglagay kayo ng ganito in a festival. Number one, wala namang kinalaman sa wrestling. Number two, what's the point? wala naman ako nakikitang sense on pouring that matches on Rolling Loud and wala rin pagtutunguhan eh. Ganun lang yun. Balik tayo sa match muna. Itong ganitong match, hindi yan magpapa-excite sa casual fans. Especially the casual fans on that crowd. Alright? Yung crowd na yan, puro mga hip-hop yan. Of course, hip-hop fans. Siyempre, sabihin natin, ayan, street profits. Siyempre, malakas sa energy ng sa tao. But, bakit tayo sa question? Bakit ka maglalagay ng mga wrestling matches during a fucking hip-hop festival? I don't get the point of that. Let's say, ayan, sabihin natin, ayan, nilagay namin yan para sa casuals. Para makita rin tayo, makilala rin tayo. Number one, bigyan ko kayo ng pro ha. Pro, syempre, magbibigay din ako ng pro ko. Baka sabihin nyo, puro ko negative. The pro, number one, I love the concept na outside yon, na open area yon. I love the concept. I wish WWE can do a open space concept or Raw or SmackDown. I love it. The con here is, pro pa rin to. At least, na-embrace pa din ng yung pop culture sa, kaya nga nandyan sila sa Rolling Loud Festival na I don't know kung welcome ba. Di ko malaman eh. I don't get the point of that pa rin. But, kung nag-take place siguro yun sa arena, wala pa rin pagtutunguhan yun eh. Regardless. Basta, the only takeaway ko, Jesus Christ. Mamaya na. So, marami na kasi ako sinabi. Baka mamaya, hindi nyo pa ma-digest masyado. Sige. Let's continue with the second match of the Rolling Loud. So, yun. Bianca Belair defends the SmackDown Women's Championship against the most beautiful woman in all of WWE. Open and close. Quote. Carmella. Ito. Number one, like what I said before, sabihin ko, like what I said before, these two women, kahit bilangin mo 100 milyon, 100,000 yung tao dyan, at hindi kilala yung mga nandyan sa Rolling Loud, I don't think na magkakaroon ng pake yung tao dyan. Sobrang labo lang sa akin itong match na to. Sobrang uphill. Parang hindi sila popular. Wala silang pake. I know, may work doon. But, I know there's a right decision test. Right decision na retain. Pero ang weird kasi na hindi kilalang talent yung dinala nila. Para siyempre siyempre example, John Cena, like what I said earlier, we can bring big talents on that Rolling Fucking Loud festival. And I think pag hindi nagwala yung tao dyan, putang ina na lang. And at least ma-hype mo yung tao. That's the goal na para mabuhayan ng dugo yung tao habang nag-aantay din sila ng performances doon sa Rolling Loud. Pero hindi naman sila nagpunta doon para lang sa wrestling. That's the goal here. Do you think I'm going to watch a Rolling Loud just for wrestling? Of course not. Hindi yun ang point But let's say the call is good. Bianca Belair retains the title. Always a good call for me kasi binibuild pa rin nila. And I can call this a house show, whatever it is. Para lang siyang house show sa akin. Yun lang talaga ang trato ko. And the question here is, what's next for Belair? I know, tinalo niya na sa Carmela 100 times. Basta ganun yun ang feeling ko pag boring na yung feud. 100 times. Sa tingin mo yun, sino yung pwedeng kumalaban kay Bianca next? Pwede din si Tony Storm if face siya or heel. Pero ang sure ko talaga, Sasha na talaga yung pwede or matinong contender right now. Yun talaga yun lang ang call nila. Ayan. So let's move on to Seth Rollins and Edge. Huwag kayong mag-alala, wala nang Rolling Loud dito. Yun ang kinakatuwa ko. Wala na sila sa Rolling Loud. And syempre, nag-battle of words sila. And ayun. Parang ito yung gusto ko dito sa segment na to. Nothing would make me happier than to crush your dreams. Yun ang sobrang, I like that line. Sobrang nagustuhan ko yun galing kay Rollins. Na sobrang, ewan ko, nag-agree ako on that thing. Sobrang ganda ng sobrang ganda ng work niya on this one. Rollins, parang nagbabalik na siya sa 2014 persona niya na sobrang hateable jerk. Ganun yung siya noong 2014. And sa tingin ko nagwo-work pa rin siya right now. And kay Edge naman, kung ipuput over niya si Seth Rollins, fine. At least nabibuild din nila si Rollins kahit paano. But I think fuck the put overs. I don't think Edge is going to lose this time. Hindi. And then ito. So nag-debut na din si Tony Storm sa SmackDown, like what I said earlier. And I feel bad for Zelina Vega. This is her third defeat straight. Talo siya ng SmackDown, talo rin siya ng Money in the Bank, talo rin siya ngayon. Wala na. Wala na akong time para ayan to. Fuck it. Wala pa siyang storyline whatsoever. Hindi pa clear sa akin kung ano yung magiging role ni Zelina Vega on WWE. Despite na medyo hindi sila, 'di ba, kay Malakay Black. Hindi pa rin maliwanag sa akin kung ano yung role niya. And then, ayun, balik tayo sa kwento. Dala tayo sa main event. So, nagkaroon nga ng promo si Roman in the ring and he mocked John Cena. Of course, he mocked him on that segment. Sobrang ang sinabi, dami siyang notable things dito, yung kagaya nung sa missionary position. Sobrang grabe nun. Yung that's an insult. He is the same guy, same bullshit guy who appeared for around 15 years. And Roman is right on that note. And then, nireject niya yung challenge. Hindi ibig sabihin nun, hindi niya nalalabanan si Roman. And then, lumabas dito si Finn Balor. And then, humarap siya kay Reigns. Not to acknowledge him, but nag-i-challenge siya. So syempre, sobrang lakas ng chance ng crowd. Roman scared. And, inaccept niyang match. Pero, cliffhanger to. I love the cliffhanger on this one. Sobrang binitin nila. Ang ganda nung pabitin nila dito eh. Kasi, I think, isiset nila yun ng SmackDown. I don't think na isiset nila yun sa SummerSlam. Kasi yun pa rin naman ang makukuha natin. Makukuha pa rin natin si Cena. And at the same time, makukuha rin natin si Balor. And at the same time, yung pagpasok dito ni Finn Balor, mas maglalaki yung seeds. Mas lalaki yung seeds doon sa match for SummerSlam and the post SummerSlam. Like, we can get a John Cena versus Finn Balor. Malay mo. In the future. And, malay mo, possible. Reigns versus Balor, maybe next feud in the future. Basta yun eh. Yun ang gusto ko na nakakasatisfy na meron sila mga pa-cliffhanger, may pabitin. Na hindi na natin nakikita for the past 15, 16, 10 years. Ang weird ng bilang eh, no? Sige. So, let's move on. Mag-umpisa tayo sa Raw ulit. Kasi we got Raw. Siyempre, nag-celebrate na nga si Nikki Cross for her win on last week's episode. Nag-cash in na nga siya ng Money in the Bank briefcase. Sobrang bilis sa pangyayari. Akala ko matatalo na naman. And then, parang ano eh, panibago. Parang nanalo lang siya ng Money in the Bank. Walang masyadong crowd. Wala masyadong kadyaw. Ngayon, ang nanalo siya, syempre, magsisigawan pa rin yung mga tao dyan. Yun, nagkaroon nga siya ng celebration, yung pinag-usapan yung character, and kung paano, ano yung kahulugan ng character niya, that's fine for me. And then, few minutes, lumabas si Charlotte, syempre, anger expression, nag-rant ulit siya dito. She said that Nikki's fairy tale will be happy ending, and she called her a disgrace. And then, hindi daw siya nagre-represent sa company. And, hindi siya star power to being the champion. Nangako rin siya na tatalunin niya or she will get the title back. Lumabas ulit si Rhea Ripley and Schumacher. And then, kukuha rin si Rhea Ripley ng rematch. And sinabi ni Nikki na the women's division is ready for a change. Ang awkward lang, immediately, nagkaroon agad ng triple threat for SummerSlam. Ang awkward eh. Charlotte, understandable kasi former champion. I understand kaya siya may rematch. Rhea Ripley, may rematch na siya ng Raw. Kaya I don't get the point. Bakit nandyan siya? Hindi siya pang lahat. Dito, conclusion ko lang sa gimmick talaga ha. Hindi pang lahat tong gimmick ni Nikki Cross. Parang ang pinupull na dito is for the kids. And syempre, effective yun. Likeable siya eh. Sobrang likeable niya para ma-pull yung trigger na to. Sobrang genius. And on the way how I see it, I think si Nikki Cross na yung top face of the Raw Women's Division. Ayan, yung kay Charlotte naman, in the other hand, para siyang she can talk. Ganun lang, she can talk, she can fight, she can win. Ayan, sorry for the interruptions. Ang dami ko ng interruption dito. So, she can fight, she can talk, or she can win. Ganun lang. That's why I love Charlotte play. And then, ang chunky lang dito konti. Kasi, ba't nandito pa si Rhea Ripley? What's the point of Rhea? I don't get the whole point. Bakit andyan si Rhea? Kasi, nakalaban na eh. Diba? Nakuha niya na yung rematch niya. I don't think it makes sense. And then, let's move on to Damian Priest versus Sheamus in a one-on-one match, number 1 contendership. Damian Priest wins the match and who will face him in the future. Ayun, sobrang solid na tong match na to. Maganda yung pinakita nila. And at least, yung parang nagka-catch up sila doon sa mga times na siyempre natalo. Sunod-sunod din yata yung talo niya after WrestleMania. And yung push niya after nung WrestleMania nga. At least, itong pagpasok niya sa US title picture, always an interesting thing. And then, ayun, so retain pa din yung Raw Tag Titles, AJ Styles and Amos versus Viking Raiders experience. And interesting din sa akin na yung kay Humberto Carrillo versus Sheamus, Humberto is now out of the picture for sure. Basta ito, balikan natin. I love the tag team match, tag team title match kaysa doon sa mga nakarang matches, Money in the Bank. Sobrang ganda lang nito. Kitang-kita natin for sure yung teamwork ni AJ Styles and ni Omos. Mas kita natin on this week's episode of Raw. Mas clear na siya sa akin. Di sila yung team na sa tingin natin hindi magkakasundo. But I think ito yung isa sa mga matches na magkasabi na fuck that, nagkakasundo kami and we are tag team. And then, let's talk about Drew McIntyre versus Veer. Of course, Jinder Mahala's thing. So, nagdemand si Jinder ng apology sa assault ni Drew last week. And siya syempre, ginamit niya yung crowd pa din na sinasabi nilang no. Then, yun na nga, nag-umpisa na yung match. Nag-distract si Jinder, sets him up, Claymore. And then, ayan, disqualification. So, Drew is the winner. Ito yung kailangan natin. Pero, hindi siya exactly na nakuha natin. Hindi siya eksakto na nakuha natin. And, yung kay Drew beating up the lawyer sounds pretty cheap to me. But, at the same time, I love it because Drew is a face. And syempre, beating up a heel or kung sino yung ginagamit ng heel will always be satisfying. And then, bubuan tayo dito kasi naiirita ako. So, we got the Karrion Kross versus Keith Lee. Ito yung sinasabi nila bawi. Ito yung bawi. Kuno. Parang minadali na yung match na to, Keith Lee versus Karrion Kross. Sayang minadali ito. Ito yung isa sa mga example na what's the difference between main roster and NXT. Ito yung isa sa mga example na magpapatunay nun. I love the takeover 30 match between Kross and Keith Lee. But this one is a big disappointment. Yun lang. And then we got the Goldberg thing. Wala si Goldberg. No. And so lumabas pa rin yung dating members ng Hurt Business, sa Cedric Alexander tsaka si Shelton Benjamin. And of course, nagkaroon nga ng 2-on-1. So, easy lang. Lashley defeated them both. Etong thing na to, I want to clarify this thing. Dapat talaga, hindi nila in-split yung Hurt Business in the first place. Hard to deny, sobrang effective ditong segment na to. Sabihin ko lang sa inyo na sobrang glorified squash itong laban na to. But, itong match na to, ginawa nilang dominant champion si Lashley. That's a clear example of kung paano dapat nagwo-work ang isang heel champion. Sobrang dominant heel champion. Ganun dapat. Sa storyline, nagwo-work siya para sa akin. And then, finally, yun nga yung dalawa pang matches. So, we got Reginald retains the 24/7 championship against R-Truth. I love R-Truth na kung saan, syempre, sobrang solid na yung mga 24/7 runs niya. And syempre, si Reginald, man, I want to give props to Reginald on this one. Kasi, sobrang angas niya ang skills niya. na, yung pag-tumbling niya pala, yung pag-dive niya kay Truth, sobrang angas nun po siya. Parang ano siya, I think I can say na Reginald is easily my second best 24/7 champion for a reason. And finally, yung isa pa, Charlotte Flair beating Nikki Ash in an non-title match. I thought this is a title match after all. Wala na akong pake masyado kasi number one, wala akong masyadong nakikitang reason para mag-exist itong storyline na to, itong match na to. And wala rin akong nakikitang dahilan para mag-take place Sorry. Kaya talaga na-obserbahan ko. So, for this week's NXT, let's move on. Kasi mahaba pa tong discussion natin. Ulitin natin tong NXT na to this week is nasa sci-fi dahil sa Olympics na kino-cover ng USA Network. And then, sobrang massive itong NXT na to this week. But unfortunately, I'm not going to mention everything. Sobrang solid ito. Despite the fact na fresh audience to. Sobrang ibang experience dito sa sci-fi. Sci-fi is, I think, their Netflix network. Parang ganun. Sorts like that. So, yeah. Pag-usapan natin real quick. So, Ciampa and Thatcher versus Beatdown and Oni Lorcan. What a good match, in my opinion. Isa sa mga pinaka-solid, underrated matches of this night. And then, lumbas dito si Rich Holland. Rich Holland is, ito yung member dapat noong Beatdown tuloy. Yung kay Pat McAfee, yung stable na Pat McAfee last year. Kaso di siya nag-push kasi na-injured nga si Holland. And ngayon, nagbalik na nga siya dito. And then, sobrang solid lang nung part dito ni Holland. And ganito dapat yung mga pinapakita nila every week sa NXT, yung Battle of the Brawlers and Technicians. Sa tingin ko sobrang effective nito. Variety siya And sobrang unique ng ganitong matches nowadays sa o kahit sa NXT, di ba? And yung stable na to ni Pete Dunne or ni Pat McAfee dati, sobrang effective na to sa tingin ko. And I hope na maglilid siya sa isang angle na magiging interesting na future angle na possible then mag-turn out into a war game starts like that. And then, so next is the Samoa Joe thing. Samoa Joe is out as the enforcer of NXT. And Samoa Joe is back in-ring competition. That's the heads up. He's ready to fire cross for his attack last week, but may plano pa si Joe. So, nag-resign siya, and then he can challenge the NXT champion. Nag-agree rin dito si Regal, and now official na siya on the TakeOver 36. Sobrang solid. Sobrang, let's say, nakakatakot si Cross. Ay, si Joe on this one. Na kinip niya yung lahat official. Sobrang sense ito. Sobrang money match ito sa NXT, in my opinion. And I think yung match na to on paper, ito yung nagsisement kay Cross as one of the best NXT champions. Despite na binaboy siya sa main roster recently, sa tingin ko this match between Cross and Joe would save Karrion Kross from that. Sa tingin ko ito yung magsisave. And then we got the... Wait, ano pa ba? ba? So, nagkaroon nga ng ng segment si Dakota Kai at si Raquel Gonzalez. And we can say na sobrang unexpected nitong heel turn ni Raquel. Regardless on the spoilers, of course. But itong heel turn na to ni Raquel is ni Dakota Kai was sobrang unexpected and syempre very interesting. Mm. Ang sinabi dito ni Dakota Kai is as long as na nandun si Dakota sa side ni Raquel, walang makakatalo. And yun, she kicked Raquel in the face, she grabbed the championship, and she will take the title. I love that. Mm. Sobrang generic, but sobrang solid ito as expected. I love the chemistry. I think. May chemistry naman sila eh. Kaya mag-expect ako na ang feeling natin dito is it's either siya na ba yung perfect woman to dethrone her for her championship? I don't think so. Si Dakota Kai is the biggest example na sa tingin natin kahit sarili kong kaibigan kaya kong talunin para lang ma-prove ko sa inyo na kaya kong talunin lahat. And I think yung pag-build nila kay Frankie Monet is the perfect thing. If ever na they're going to build the next champion. If Dakota Kai wins the belt, it makes sense. If Frankie wins the belt, it makes sense. Either of those two. Basta I don't think lang na mananalo si Dakota kay Raquel. I don't think lang talaga. And then, we got the match between Adam Cole and Bronson Reed. Nandito pa rin yung conclusion. Nandito pa din yung feud ni Adam Cole and ni Kyle O'Reilly na walang kamatayan. Hindi pa rin ito matatapos. Gusto ko sabihin, I love the feud, but I'm tired of this feud. Yun lang. And then, so, meron pa rin tayong na-notice syempre before we end the NXT. Na nagkaroon nga ng confrontation si Indy Hartwell, si Candice LeRae, at saka si Johnny Gargano. Ayun, so, nagkaroon ng match. So, ito ang meaning nag-set siya ng match, Gargano and Loomis. And, if mananalo si Loomis, i-date ni Indy Hartwell si Loomis. And if Johnny Gargano wins, history na yan. You know what's next. And you know the results as well. Yan, alam na yan. Basta let's say, I love the Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly feud, but I'm tired of it. And by the way, yung kay Reed and kay Cole, one of the underrated matches here on this week's episode. I think, easy pick to for match of the week. But I don't think ito may magtatap pa dito, aside dito, sa match na to. And the final match, na binibuild pa din nila, between Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly. Parang ang nakikita ko kasi dito naglag yung storyline nila. But at least na-build nila ulit ngayon. Ganon yung na-feel ko on this one. Ganon yung impression ko about that. And hindi ako nagkamali doon. So, babo na tayo. AEW Dynamite. Before we continue, I want to give you guys a warning kasi malapit na nga ang 8/8 sales ng Shopee and Lazada. So, I don't know what's the whole name of that shit is. Di ko alam. Basta, if you want to shop on Lazada and Shopee, please use my links on the description of this podcast episode. So, that's tinyurl.com/ShopeeXMTG show or /LazadaXM TG show. The purchase, yung makukuha nyo on that is pwede kong magamit. And we can makapagbigay din tayo sa Podcast Network Asia and sa Podmetrics. And because of that, you can help me na magpatuloy pa tong podcast, of course. And syempre sa Podmetrics din. Ano? So yeah, Shopee and Lazada. Again, that's tinyurl.com/Shopee XMTG show or tinyurl.com/Lazada XMTG show. So let's move on Dynamite. Yung nangyari kanina sa Dynamite. Let's do a real quick recap kasi medyo mahaba na yun. Nasayang na rin yung laway ko. So we got a 10-man tag team match elimination between the Dark Order and Adam Page versus the Elite. So real quick summary ko lang. I love the match and may sense. May sense yung story nito. Pero sa tingin ko, meron pa rin tungo to eh. Parang nakikita natin na sobrang confident nila Adam Page on this one. And yung sense na protected pa din yung One Winged Angel sa Impact and AEW. May sense eh. And I think yung pag si Page yung unang naka-kick out doon, for sure, and it's gonna be good. It's gonna be satisfying para sa akin. For now, hindi mo na mako-close yung story na yan. Parang na-slip na yung fingers niya. And parang binibitin pa rin tayo on that moment. Ganun lang ang tingin ko dito. At we can get pa din that match. Meron siyang way para matungo pa doon. Meron pa siya isang buwan para mabuild yun. And I think itong match na to, nagpatunay dito na hindi pa tapos ang kwento. And sa tingin ko, tutungo rin tayo sa inahantay nila na match between Adam Page and Kenny Omega. So also, we got the FTW champion Ricky Starks. Lumabas pa rin dito si Brian Cage. Syempre, kaso nag-walk out pa rin parehas. Okay, fine. And then, we got a pre-recorded message from New Japan's Hiroshi Tanahashi na challenge niya yung winner of the Archer and Hikuleo match for the United States title. Kinonfirm na rin kanina na the match will take place on Resurgence on August 14. So mamaya natin i-explain kung ano yung outcome. Yeah. So we got Santana and Ortiz versus FTR. Tuloy-tuloy pa din yung feud between Inner Circle and the Pinnacle. And ito sa tingin ko yung top teams ng AEW aside sa Bucks. Sa tingin ko. And I can say na okay, fine. The match is fine for me. Pero I think hindi pa tayo matatapos doon sa feud na to. Yun lang. And gusto ko rin magbigay ng props, syempre, kay Santana and Ortiz. And sobrang solid ng pinakita nila dito despite the circumstances, despite the injury, and I wish na okay na ulit silang apat. And then, Hikuleo versus Lance Archer. Bago yon, we are going to do the announcement thing. So, nagkaroon ng announcement na yung Rampage on the 20th will take place from United Center on August 20. Ito yung tatawagin daw nilang The First Dance. Syempre galing to kay Michael Jordan, The Last Dance. And then, nag-promo immediately si Darby Allin na sinabi niya na he said that the greatest wrestlers come to AEW to prove it. Even if you think you're the best in the world. So, syempre, teaser yun. And then, ayan, we got Lance Archer walking like a bitch, holding the IWGP title against Hikuleo. sobrang solid nitong laban. I can say na napakita ni Hikuleo dito kung ano yung galing niya dito eh. But let's say na obvious naman manalo dito si obvious naman na Archer to. I don't think anybody from AEW makakatalo dito. I think Hiroshi hindi niya rin matatalo si Archer. Yan. Yan lang sa akin. Okay, okay lang. Pero ang take away ko lang dito sa match na to, I think is, ba't wala ata tayong nakitang rematch from Max and di ko lang di natin nakuha yung rematch. Ito, ganito If hindi mag-a-appear si Punk sa show na to, ito yung isa sa mga pinakamalaking lap trip na nakita. Isa sa mga pinakamalaking bullshit moments ng AEW sa tingin ko. Sobrang lap trip nito, panigurado ako. And then finally, we got the main event of the evening. It's Chris Jericho versus Nick Gage. Ito, I want to do a summary of this kasi medyo hindi ako fan noong ginawa ni Nick Gage on this one. Kasi medyo nalilimit siya because of the TV. Nalimit siya para sa akin. And hindi ko rin masisisi si Jericho kung ayaw rin siya on the match. Pero the match is fine for me. 15 minutes of hardcore shit na never na natin nakikita sa kabilang promotion. You know what I mean? And Nick Gage, para sa akin, isa lang siyang stepping stone for the feud between MJF and, of course, Chris Jericho. Isa lang siya malaking stepping stone. And I think that match alone proves it. And then, finally, we got the review for Impact. And then we're going to have a recap real quick for the New Japan Wrestle Grand Slam. We're going to do a big recap lang. So, I'm going to give my opinion kay Jay White na nag-appear sa nag-appear kasi siya sa sa Impact Zone. In-address niya yung niya dito, of course. So, he said that andun siya para kay David Finlay. And yung promotion, pinromote niya din yung Resurgence. And then, syempre, lumabas din yung The Good Brothers, tsaka si Don Callis, Kenny Omega. And yung argument over Bullet Club, bragging rights. So, syempre, nag-argument sila about that. And nag-demand, syempre, ng thank you. Itong dalawang members ng Bullet Club, Carl Anderson and si Gallows. And yung brawl na to is natapos din, syempre, nung lumabas si Chris Bay. Chris Bay is the guy na kinukuha ni Jay White to be a member of Bullet Club. And I think on this thing, na-promote, naging member na si Chris Bay sa Bullet Club. And hindi yung sure ko naka-accomplish nila ng simple, tatlong bagay agad. Number 1, na-explain yung attack ni Finlay kay Jay White. Number 2, na-set up na rin yung possible na Bound for Glory main event, Jay White's Bullet Club, Kenny Omega's Bullet Club. And yung kay Chris Bay as one of the latest members ng Bullet Club. Sobrang komportable ako sa segment na to. I love this shit. Ayan, finally, yan lang. We're going to do the recap for the Wrestle Grand Slam on this week. So we got the IWGP the Junior Heavyweight Championship. So we got El Desperado versus Robbie Eagles. I think napanood ko pa to, nakabutan ko to. I love the match. And I think Mr. Robbie Eagles deserves that match in my opinion. I don't want to spoil everybody, but I think sobrang deserve niya dito. So, He deserves the win. And then, we got a Okada versus Jeff Cobb match. Parang ang ad. Ang ad na makakita ako ng isang roll-up finish in the Tokyo Dome. Ang ano parang awkward, ang weird. But at least sabi ko sa inyo, nakaka-follow up pa rin si Okada sa picture and sa G1 if ever na mag-announce na sila anytime. Sobrang impressive nung pinakita nila on this one. And then, of course, we got a title change ulit. So, the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team titles, Sanada and Naito versus CSJ and Taichi. Ay, in-expect ko na to na sila Taichi yung mananalo dito. In-expect ko na yon. And of course, the main event, Shingo Takagi versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. In-explain na natin yung reason kung bakit wala si Kota Ibushi on this match. Nagkaroon siya ng sakit. Pneumonia. I wish na gumaling din si Ibushi. Kahit, let's say, this match, hindi siya madali na for short notice, sa tingin ko, nagpakita pa din ng angas dito si Ibushi. Ay si Tanahashi, para sa akin. Kahit sobrang short notice nitong laban na to, sa tingin ko, I want to give my respect pa din kay Hiroshi Tanahashi on this one. Kasi he had the guts to do this. And I think on this very match, napakita ni Tanahashi na kahit short notice, he can stole the show and he did. And now, pupunta siya sa US to fight Lance Archer for the US title. Ang patunay lang yun na he deserves everything that he got. So, yun lang sa akin. I love the match. I don't think na i-rate ko pa siya. If I'm going to rate the match, I can rate it 4. He stole the show. Talaga. Indeed. And then we got other news bago tayo mag-wrap up. So, we got from last week's NXT UK, in-announce na Walter versus Ilya Dragunov will take place on TakeOver 36. It's gonna be a good match for sure. And then, may scoop tayo last week din na galing ito sa Observer na pinapatanggal ng WWE si DB, Daniel Bryan, from the 2K22. I think that move was a very obvious move. Kaya na in-expect ko na siya. Pero, ang nakikita ko lang talaga dito is it's either dick move or win-win pa din for AEW if ever na-sign na nga nila si DB. Yeah. And finally, before we go to the tao ba dito? Putang ina. Yung huli nating segment for this week is the picks of the week, of course. Yung mga picks natin from last week. So, finally, Jeff Hardy, nag-positive siya sa COVID. In-announce ito ng isang record bar venue sa Kansas City. And yung tickets daw, i-move daw yun sa later date. Walang refunds na nangyari. So, yeah. And then, of course, we have to move on. Doon tayo sa mga picks of the week natin. So, the superstar of the week is Roman Reigns. Sa tingin ko, he stole that fucking segment. Sobrang solid ng part dito ni Roman from this week's SmackDown. I think sobrang angas lang ng pinakita niya on this one. And sa tingin ko, hindi na magagawa to ng kahit sino eh. And obviously, the woman is obviously Nikki Cross. I love Nikki Cross work on last week's SmackDown, on last week's Raw and this week's Raw. Regardless, I love this week's Nikki Cross. I think sa tingin ko, hindi pa matatapos yung reign niya dito and I love it. And finally, our match of the week. Marami tayong minention na matches of the week. Although, but ito yung pinaka nagustuhan ko, so the IWGP US title, Texas Deathmatch, Jon Moxley, Lance Archer. Panoorin nyo na lang, promise. Hindi nyo mariregret yung, yeah, hindi nyo mariregret to na pinanood nyo. So, yeah, that's it for me on this week's podcast. I want to say thank you for everyone who is supporting this podcast. I want to say thank you for everybody who kasi pa rin yung mga nakikinig sa akin here on the podcast. And sana I wish andyan pa rin kayo until the end of the world. Whatever. Ayan, so we're going to wrap this thing up on the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and TikTok at the MTG Show Pod. And then, follow din, paki-follow din tayo on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, sa Anchor, and on the podcast app sa Deezer. And you can listen to the podcast finally via Facebook. Kasi nagkaroon nga ng partnership si Facebook at saka si Spotify. Pwede ka nang makinig sa Spotify nang hindi lumalayo sa Facebook. Ganun, ang unique eh. Habang nagpe-Facebook ka, pwede ka nang mag-podcast. That's the concept of the Facebook x Spotify partnership. And then also, follow me on all of my social media platforms at AG Pinera. Also, for Pipe Network, please visit pipenetwork.co for more Pipe Network shows. Visit, of course, our Facebook page at Pipe Network, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Pipe Network. And yun lang ang sa akin. I wanna say thank you for everyone who is listening to the podcast. Sorry, nawala yung audio ko doon, puta. Ayun, so please follow Pipe Network on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok. And that's it for this week's episode. Pasensya na ako naputol yung episode. Nag-fuck up na yung B8 ko. So, yeah, stay safe. Stay reso. See you on the next episode of the podcast. Peace. Register to vote. Stay safe. I hope na nakapaganda na kayo kasi we can expect a lockdown anytime soon. Yeah, stay safe.